The summer of 1918 brought with it a heaviness that had nothing to do with the heat. Nathan Cross sat on the porch of his ranch house, 72 years old now, his weathered hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The wood beneath him creaked with familiar comfort, a sound he'd heard for 40 years, ever since he'd built this place with his own 2 hands back in '78. His grandson Samuel stood by the corral, 16 years old and trying hard to look like a man. The boy had received his draft notice that morning. In 2 weeks, he'd be on a train east, heading toward a war that had already swallowed up too many young men. "Grandpa," Samuel called out, his voice carrying across the yard. "Were you ever scared? Really scared?" Nathan took a long breath, feeling the weight of decades settle into his bones. He'd been waiting for this question, knowing it would come eventually. The boy deserved an answer, a real one.
"Once," Nathan said, setting down his cup. 40 years ago. Let me tell you about the summer of 1878. The old man's eyes grew distant, looking past the present, past the ranch as it stood now with its expanded barns and sturdy fences, back to a time when everything had been broken, including himself. It was July then, and the New Mexico territory burned under a sun that showed no mercy. Nathan Cross was 32 years old, though he felt twice that in his soul. The war had ended 13 years earlier, the Civil War that had torn the nation apart and left scars on every man who'd fought in it. He'd served with the Union Army, survived battles whose names still haunted his dreams, and came home to build a life. But life had other plans. His ranch sprawled across 160 acres, claimed under the Homestead Act back in '65 when he'd first returned from the war. The paperwork sat in the Santa Fe Land Office, registration number HE-1865-3471. Everything legal, everything proper, everything empty. 45 head of longhorn cattle grazed his land. 8 quarter horses stood in his corral. The cabin he'd built measured 20 by 24 feet, solid timber with a small loft. 1 room, 1 table, 2 chairs, 1 bed. 1 man, living like he was already dead. The cattle didn't ask questions. The horses didn't judge. And that's exactly how Nathan wanted it. 3 years earlier, in the spring of '75, he'd left for San Antonio on a cattle drive. 2 weeks away, driving stock to market, earning the money he needed to expand the ranch. When he returned, his world had ended. The house had been burned. Not by accident, not by lightning or a knocked-over lamp. Comancheros, the sheriff had said, raiders who rode the border between Mexican and Comanche territories, taking what they wanted, leaving only ash and grief behind. Sarah had been 29. Their daughter Emma had been 4. He found them in the ruins. Some things a man carries with him forever. The smell of burned wood mixed with something worse. The silence where laughter used to be. The weight of a small body wrapped in a blanket, so light it didn't seem real. He buried them on the hill behind the ranch, under 2 cottonwood trees he'd planted the day Emma was born. Every week for 3 years, he'd sat by those graves and talked to them, apologized, asked for forgiveness that never came. The people of Socorro, the nearest town 12 miles south, whispered about him. The hermit, the man who turned away every offer of comfort, every attempt at connection. Catherine Miller, the preacher's daughter, had tried 6 times now, showing up with pies and bread, and those hopeful eyes that made Nathan's chest tight with guilt. "Miss Miller," he'd told her just last week, "I appreciate the kindness, but I'm not the marrying kind anymore."
She'd left the pie anyway. He'd given it to his horses. His only friend, if you could call him that, was Sheriff Tom Brennan. They'd both served in the war, both carried scars that didn't show. Tom understood silence. He didn't push. "You can't live like a hermit forever, Nate," Tom had said last month at the saloon. "Watch me," Nathan had replied. That particular evening at the saloon hadn't ended well. Buck Morrison, a ranch hand who worked for one of the big spreads, had too much whiskey and too little sense. Nathan sat alone at the bar, nursing his drink, trying to ignore the laughter and noise around him. "Heard the preacher's girl brought you another pie," Buck called out, his words slurring. "You gonna eat it or throw it to the hogs like the last one?" Nathan kept his eyes on his glass, said nothing. "Maybe that's why your wife left," Buck continued, emboldened by alcohol and stupidity. "Couldn't stand a man with no—" Nathan's fist connected with Buck's jaw before the sentence finished. The crack of bone echoed through the saloon, followed by the crash of chairs and tables as the two men collided. It was brief, brutal. Nathan fought with the kind of cold precision that came from years of war, and Buck hit the floor with blood streaming from his broken nose. Sheriff Tom pulled them apart, dragged them both outside, and made Nathan pay $5 for the damage. $5. A week's wages. Nathan rode home that night under a sky full of stars that seemed to mock him with their beauty. He stopped at the graves on the hill, dismounted, and stood between the two cottonwood trees. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," he said to the silence. "I'm sorry I'm still here." The next morning arrived with the same merciless sun, the same empty routine. Feed the horses, check the fences, avoid thinking, avoid feeling. Survive another day. He saddled his best horse, a gray gelding named Ash, and rode east towards Cibola Canyon. The cattle sometimes wandered that way, drawn by a natural spring 12 miles from the ranch. It was good grazing land, protected by rock walls that kept the worst of the wind away. The ride was peaceful at first, the kind of peace that felt more like numbness. The landscape rolled past in shades of brown and gold, endless and unchanging. This was his world now, solitary, contained, safe. Then he saw the smoke. It rose from beyond the canyon ridge, thick and black against the blue sky. Not the thin gray of a campfire, not the white of burning brush. This was the dense, oily smoke of structures burning. Wood and fabric and things that shouldn't burn. Nathan's hands tightened on the reins. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, to ride away, to not get involved. 3 years ago he'd failed to protect what mattered most. What right did he have to help anyone else? But the smoke kept rising, and with it came a memory. His own house burning. Sarah and Emma inside. No one coming to help, because no one knew. No one there, because he'd been gone. What if someone needed help? What if they were like Sarah? He touched his heels to Ash's flanks and rode toward the smoke. The canyon opened up before him, and what he saw hollowed him out inside all over again. 5 wickiups, the traditional Apache dwellings made of brush and hide, had been burned to the ground. The frames still stood in places, skeletal and black. 9 bodies lay scattered across the clearing, and even from a distance, Nathan could see the bullet wounds. This hadn't been a battle. This had been an execution. His horse balked at the smell of death, and Nathan had to dismount, leading Ash by the reins as he walked into the clearing. The bodies were a mix of ages and genders, old and young, men and women. Someone had come here and killed everyone they could find. Then he saw her. In the center of the destruction, a woman stood. She held 2 children close, one on each side, her arms wrapped protectively around them. Her face was streaked with ash and dirt, but her eyes were clear, sharp, the kind of eyes that had seen too much and refused to look away. She was maybe 28, dressed in a mix of Apache and settler clothing. Dark hair hung loose around her shoulders. In her right hand, she held a hunting knife. Nathan took a step forward, and she turned toward him, her body shifting to put herself between him and the children. "Stay back," she said in perfect English, "or I'll add you to the graves." He stopped, raised his hands slowly, showing he carried no weapon in them.
"I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly.
She studied him for a long moment, taking in his worn work clothes, his weathered face, the gray streaks in his dark hair. He was just a rancher, nobody special, nobody threatening. "Then get me a shovel," she said. He had one tied to his saddle. He retrieved it and brought it back, extending it handle first. She took it with one hand, never letting go of the knife in the other. They buried the dead together. 9 graves, 4 feet deep each to keep the animals away. They worked in silence, the only sounds the bite of shovels into earth and the occasional sob from the little girl. The boy, maybe 9 years old, stood rigid and dry-eyed, clutching a small bow. The last grave was different. The woman, whose name Nathan still didn't know, stood over it longer than the others. She placed something inside before they filled it in. A hunting bow, beautifully crafted. She knelt and spoke a single sentence in Apache. Nathan didn't understand the words, but he understood grief. He'd spoken his own prayers over graves not so different from these. When they finished, the sun was setting. Nathan built a small fire and offered what food he had: hardtack, jerky, coffee that had been in his saddlebag too long. She fed the children first, then ate slowly, methodically, like someone who'd forgotten that food could be anything but fuel. "You got family nearby?" Nathan asked. "Tribe that'd take you in?" "My mother's people are 2 days north," she said. "Mescalero camp near Ruidoso." "They'll help?" She paused, staring into the fire. "My mother was Mescalero. My father was French, a trader. When I married Daniel, a white settler, some in the tribe called it a second betrayal." "And his people?" "His father disowned him, said he'd polluted the bloodline." Her voice was flat, empty of emotion, just stating facts. Nathan understood that tone. He'd used it himself when talking about Sarah and Emma. When the pain was too big for feelings, you retreated into facts. "I can take you to Ruidoso," he offered. 2 days is nothing. "We'll manage alone." He blinked, surprised. In 3 years, no one had refused his help, mostly because he'd never offered any. "Ma'am, your boy's already sick. I can hear him coughing. And you got no horse, no supplies." "We've survived worse." "Why refuse help?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw the steel in her spine. "Because men don't help for free. They expect something back, and I've got nothing left to give." He had no answer for that. She was right. In his experience, most men did expect payment of one kind or another. He couldn't blame her for assuming he was the same. The night passed slowly. Nathan kept the fire going, sitting on one side while she and the children huddled on the other. The boy coughed throughout the night, a wet, rattling sound that Nathan recognized from winters long ago. Emma had coughed like that the winter before she died. When morning came, He saddled Ash and prepared to leave. He'd done what he could. The rest wasn't his responsibility. But as he mounted, he heard the boy cough again, saw the woman checking his forehead for fever, watched the little girl cry quietly into her mother's skirt. 40 years later, sitting on his porch in 1918, old Nathan would tell his grandson that this was the moment everything changed. "Samuel," he said, "that morning I saddled up to leave. Told myself it wasn't my problem. But then I heard that boy coughing, same way Emma used to cough that last winter, and I knew I couldn't ride away." In 1878, 32-year-old Nathan climbed down from his horse and walked back to where the woman stood. "The boy needs shelter," he said, "warm food, rest. He won't make it 2 days on foot." "He's stronger than you think." "Maybe, but why risk it?" He paused. "My place is an hour west." "Stay there till he's better. Then I'll take you north myself. No strings." She looked at her son, whose face was flushed with fever, then back at Nathan. "Why?" she asked. "Because 3 years ago my house burned, my wife and daughter died, and no one came to help. I won't be that person." Something shifted in her eyes. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. "1 week," she said. "Then we go. And I work for my keep. I don't take charity." He nodded. The journey to his ranch took 2 hours. He gave her his horse, the woman and the little girl riding, while he walked alongside, carrying the boy in his arms. The child was burning up now, drifting in and out of consciousness. Somewhere along the trail, Nathan found himself humming an old song, a lullaby from before the war, when the world was different. "All the pretty little horses." He'd sung it to Emma every night. "That's a Southern song," the woman said. "You fought for the North." "War is war," he replied. "Sadness sounds the same on both sides." "You lost someone in the war, too?" "Everyone did." When they reached the ranch, the sun was setting again. His cabin stood alone on the prairie, small and weathered and lonely. He carried the boy inside and laid him on the only bed. The woman stood in the doorway, taking in the spare interior. 1 room, 1 table, 2 chairs, a gun rack, a cold stove. No pictures on the walls, no personal items anywhere, just the bare necessities for survival. "You really do live like you're already dead," she said quietly. "You 3 take the cabin," he told her. "I'll sleep in the barn." "We don't need—" "Not up for debate, ma'am." He walked outside, and at the door he paused and looked back. The woman sat on the edge of the bed, holding the boy's hand. The little girl climbed up beside them, curling into her mother's side. For the first time in 3 years, Nathan's house had life in it. That night, lying in the barn on a pile of hay, staring up at the rafters, he couldn't sleep. His mind kept returning to the cabin, to the 3 people inside who'd lost everything, just like he had. In 1918, old Nathan smiled at his grandson. "That night in the barn, I couldn't sleep. For the first time in 3 years, my house had life in it, and I wasn't sure if that was a blessing or a curse." Samuel leaned forward. "But it was a blessing, right?" "Son," Nathan said, "sometimes the best blessings start out looking like curses. You'll understand that someday." The sun rose on a new day, and Nathan Cross, for the first time since Sarah and Emma died, had a reason to wake up that wasn't just habit. 3 people were counting on him now. He didn't know their names yet, didn't know their story, didn't know if they'd stay a week or forever. But he knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't fail them. Not this time. The first light of dawn crept through the gaps in the barn walls, painting stripes across Nathan's face. He'd slept poorly, his dreams filled with smoke and fire and the sound of a child coughing. When he finally gave up on sleep and walked to the cabin, he found the woman already awake, boiling water on the stove he'd thought was broken. She'd somehow coaxed it back to life, and the smell of coffee filled the small space. Real coffee, not the chicory substitute most folks settled for. She must have brought it from whatever remained of her supplies. "Boy's fever is worse," she said without turning around. "He needs medicine." Nathan nodded, though she couldn't see him. "I'll ride to town. Get quinine bark. Doc Morrison keeps some at his office." "Town," she repeated, and there was something in her voice. Not fear exactly, wariness. "They'll ask questions." "Let them ask." She turned then, and in the morning light he saw her clearly for the first time. Younger than he'd thought. Late 20s, maybe. Her face carried the kind of beauty that came from strength rather than softness. Apache cheekbones, but her father's lighter eyes. A woman caught between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. "What's your name?" he asked. "Kaya," she said. "Kaya Rivers. The boy is Tomas. The girl is Lily." "Nathan Cross." She nodded once, a formal acknowledgement. "Thank you for the shelter, Mr. Cross." Just Nathan. He rode to Socorro as the sun climbed higher, pushing ash hard. The town was already awake, the main street busy with wagons and people going about their morning business. He tied his horse outside Henderson's Mercantile and went inside. Mrs. Henderson stood behind the counter, a woman of 55 with sharp eyes and sharper opinions. She looked up as the bell over the door jangled, and her expression shifted from pleasant shopkeeper to curious gossip in the span of a heartbeat. "Nathan Cross," she said, drawing out his name. "Haven't seen you in 2 weeks. Heard you got company." Word traveled fast. It always did in small towns. "Just helping folks in need, Mrs. Henderson. An Indian woman and 2 half-breed children, they say. That true?" His jaw tightened. Apache and settler both. And yes. She leaned forward, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow managed to carry to every corner of the store. "People are talking, Nathan. Saying you finally found yourself a woman. About time, too, if you ask me. Though I always thought you and Catherine Miller would—" "I need quinine bark," he interrupted. "Willow bark tea, if you have it. Honey and flour." Mrs. Henderson's mouth pinched, but she gathered the items. As she wrapped them, she couldn't resist one more comment. "Just be careful, Nathan. Some folks around here don't take kindly to mixing. Some folks should mind their own business." He paid, left, and headed to the saloon. It was early, but Tom Brennan was usually there around this time, having coffee before his rounds as sheriff. Nathan found him at a corner table, reading a week-old newspaper. "Tom?" The sheriff looked up, took in Nathan's expression, and gestured to the empty chair. "Sit. You look like you need to talk." Nathan sat, ordered coffee he didn't want. When it came, he wrapped his hands around the cup and told Tom everything. The smoke, the massacre, the woman and her children, his decision to help. Tom listened without interrupting, his face growing more serious with each detail. "9 dead," Tom said finally. "You sure it was settlers did it?" "Bullet wounds, not arrows, and she said they were white men, 10 riders." "Army deserters, maybe, or raiders." Tom rubbed his face. "Nate, you know people are already talking."
Let them talk. It's not that simple. You bring an Apache woman to your ranch, folks are going to assume things. She's not just Apache. Her father was French.
Her husband was a settler. She's got as much right to be here as anyone. You know that. I know that. But try explaining it to Buck Morrison and his friends. As if summoned by his name, Buck himself walked into the saloon. His nose was still bandaged from their fight 3 nights ago, and when he saw Nathan, his eyes narrowed. "Well, well," Buck said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "The hermit got himself a squaw." Nathan set down his coffee cup very carefully. Tom put a hand on his arm. "Don't," Tom said quietly. But Buck was drunk, or stupid, or both, and he kept talking as he walked closer. "Tell me, Cross, does she warm your bed? Or you keeping her for the housework? I hear they're good at—" Nathan's chair hit the floor as he stood. His fist connected with Buck's jaw before the man could finish his sentence, and this time Nathan didn't stop at one punch. 3 years of grief and rage poured out of him in a flurry of violence that left Buck bleeding on the saloon floor. Tom pulled him off, but it took effort. "God damn it, Nathan," the sheriff said, dragging him outside. "What the hell's gotten into you?" He crossed a line. "And you just painted a target on your back. People think she's more than a guest now." Nathan jerked his arm free. "I don't care what people think." "You should. Because if Hayes's people hear about this, if they think you're harboring Apache, they'll come, and I won't be able to stop them." Nathan rode back to the ranch with Tom's warning echoing in his head. The sun was high now, beating down with that relentless summer heat that made everything shimmer. He found Kaya outside the cabin, hanging clothes on a line she must have strung herself. Tomas lay in the shade nearby, and Lily sat beside him, holding his hand. Kaya looked up as Nathan dismounted, saw his bruised knuckles. "You fought for me." "I fought because he's a bastard. Don't lie. I know what they're saying in town. I've heard it all before." He had no answer for that. She was right. He'd fought because Buck had insulted her, and everyone in that saloon knew it. She walked over, took the supplies from his saddlebag without asking, and started back toward the cabin. At the door, she paused. "This is why we should leave, before it gets worse, before you lose everything because of us. You said 1 week. It's been 1 day. 1 day and you're already bleeding. That's 1 day too long." She went inside before he could respond. Nathan stood in the yard, listening to the wind move through the grass, and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. The days that followed fell into a pattern. Nathan worked the ranch as always, checking fences and moving cattle. But now, when he returned to the cabin, there was life there. Smoke from the stove, voices inside, the sound of Lily laughing. Kaya never stopped working. She cleaned the cabin until it shone, repaired his clothes, started a small garden near the house with seeds she'd saved from somewhere. She never asked for help, never complained, and never seemed to expect anything beyond shelter. Tomas improved slowly. The quinine bark helped, and whatever herbal remedies Kaya knew worked their own kind of magic. By the 3rd day, the boy was sitting up. By the 5th, he was walking outside, though he still tired easily. Nathan found himself drawn to the children in ways that both comforted and terrified him. Lily reminded him of Emma, with her curiosity and her easy laughter. She followed him everywhere, asking endless questions about the horses and the cattle and the land. "Can I pet the horses?" she asked one morning, her small hand tucked into his as they walked to the corral. "Sure, but you have to approach slow. Let them see you coming. Talk soft, here like this." He showed her how to extend her hand, palm flat, how to touch the horse's neck with gentle strokes. Bella, the old mare, nickered softly, and leaned into Lily's touch. The girl laughed, pure and delighted, and Nathan felt his throat tighten. From the cabin doorway, Kaya watched them. When Nathan glanced over, he saw tears on her cheeks that she quickly wiped away. Tomas was harder to reach. The boy was polite but distant, his grief forming a wall Nathan recognized all too well. He watched Nathan with wary eyes, as if waiting for the man to reveal his true intentions. One morning, Nathan woke early and found Tomas already outside, practicing with his small bow. The boy's form was good, his stance solid, but his elbow was too high, throwing off his aim. Nathan watched for a moment, then cleared his throat. Tomas spun around, bow raised defensively. "Easy," Nathan said, hands up. "Just watching. Your father teach you that?" Tomas nodded, lowering the bow slowly. "He taught you well. Your stance is good, but your elbow's too high. Throws off your trajectory. Want me to show you?" The boy hesitated, then nodded again. Nathan spent the next hour teaching him how to adjust for wind, how to calculate distance, how to let the bow become an extension of his arm rather than a tool he was fighting. When Tomas finally hit a cactus 30 yards away, dead center, the boy's face lit up with a smile Nathan suspected was rare these days. "Thanks, Mr. Cross," Tomas said quietly. Just Nathan. "Thanks, Nathan." It was a small thing, a beginning. That afternoon, Nathan returned from checking the north fence line and found Kaya repairing a section near the cabin. She worked with the confidence of someone who'd done it 100 times before, her hands quick and sure as she stretched the wire and tied it off with a perfect box hitch. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked. She didn't startle, though he'd approached quietly. "My father, Jacques Moreau." He was a fur trader from Quebec, traveled the Southwest for 20 years. Trader must have needed to know a lot of skills. He said a woman should know how to survive without a man. Taught me everything, how to build, hunt, trade, heal. She finished the knot and moved to the next section. He also taught me that people fear what they don't understand, and they hate what they fear. What happened to him? White traders killed him when I was 15. Said a Frenchman with an Indian wife was bad for business. Her voice remained level, factual. My mother died a year later. Grief, the healers said. I think she just didn't want to live in a world without him. Nathan had no words for that. Sometimes there were no words. Your husband, he said instead. Daniel, how'd you meet? He came to trade with my mother's people. Most settlers wanted to cheat us, but Daniel was fair, honest. We talked sometimes, and then we talked more, and then one day he asked if I'd marry him. She smiled, small and sad. Both our families disowned us. His father said he'd polluted the bloodline. My tribe said I'd betrayed them twice, first for my father's blood, then for my husband's. But you married him anyway. Love doesn't ask permission from the world. That evening, after the children were asleep, Nathan and Kaya sat on the porch. It had become a routine somehow, these quiet moments when the day ended and the night began. They didn't talk much, just sat in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the prairie settling. Finally, Nathan spoke. I had a wife, Sarah, and a daughter, Emma. Kaya waited, silent. 3 years ago, I came home from a cattle drive, found the house burned, them inside. Comancheros, the sheriff said. Raiders who didn't care who they killed. I'm sorry. When I saw you in that clearing, holding your children, I saw her, standing there alone, dying alone. And I couldn't leave you there like someone left her. You're a good man, Nathan Cross. Good men don't let their families die. Good men protect what matters. I failed. She turned to face him, and in the moonlight, her eyes were fierce. You weren't there. That's not the same as failing. Feels the same. Then maybe we're both wrong. Maybe we both get a second chance. He looked at her, really looked, and something passed between them. Not love, not yet, but recognition. Two people who'd lost everything, finding themselves in the same place at the same time, wondering if that meant something. The second week passed more easily than the first. Tomas grew stronger each day, and Lily's laughter became a constant presence in the cabin. Kaya's garden began to show green shoots, and Nathan found himself coming home earlier, staying longer, talking more. One morning, he taught Lily to ride. She sat in the saddle on Bella, gripping the horn with both hands, her face a mixture of terror and joy. "You're doing great," Nathan said, walking beside the horse. "Just relax. Let your body move with her movement." "Mr. Cross?" "Yeah, little one?" "Were you a daddy before?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He stopped walking, and Bella stopped with him. Lily looked down at him with those innocent eyes, waiting for an answer. "Yes," he said finally, his voice rough. "A long time ago." "Were you good at it?" "I tried to be." "You're good at it now." From where she stood near the cabin, watching them, Kaya pressed a hand to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. That same afternoon, Nathan took Tomas out to check the cattle. The boy rode behind him on Ash, his thin arms wrapped around Nathan's waist for balance. They rode in comfortable silence until they reached the grazing area, where the longhorns clustered around the natural spring. "See how they move together?" Nathan said. "Cattle have a herd instinct. They feel safer in groups. But that also means if one spooks, they all spook. You have to read their movement. Watch for the signs." "What signs?" "Ears back, tail switching fast, bunched together tight instead of spread out. Those are your warnings. Means something's wrong. Could be a predator, could be a storm coming, could be nothing, but you always pay attention." Tomas watched the cattle carefully, his young face serious. "My father wanted to teach me ranching, but we never had time. He was always trying to make peace between his world and my mother's. Sounds like he was a good man." "He was. He died protecting us, stood between the riders and our home." Tomas's voice cracked. "It didn't matter. They killed him anyway." Nathan's hand tightened on the reins. "Your father did what any good man would do. He made sure you and your sister and your mother had a chance to survive. That matters, Tomas. That matters more than anything. Will you teach me? Everything my father didn't have time for?" "Yeah, I'll teach you." "Why do you care?" Nathan thought about that. Thought about Sarah and Emma. Thought about the 3 years he'd spent building walls around himself, convinced that caring about anything only led to more pain. "Because good men pass on what they know," he said finally. "Your father was a good man, so I'll teach you for him." The boy was quiet for a moment. Then, so softly Nathan almost didn't hear it, "Thank you, Nathan." Not Mr. Cross anymore, just Nathan. It was progress. That night, long after the children were asleep, Nathan sat in the barn with a lantern and a piece of wood. He'd been carving in the evenings, something he hadn't done since before the war. His hands remembered the movements, the careful cuts that slowly revealed the shape hidden in the wood. He didn't hear Tomas approach until the boy spoke. "Nathan?" He looked up. Tomas stood in the doorway, clutching something in his hand. "Can I ask you something? In secret?" "Shoot." The boy came closer, glancing back toward the cabin to make sure no one followed. Then he opened his hand, revealing a silver medallion on a leather cord. "Before Father died, he gave me this, said to keep it safe, that it's important." Nathan set down his carving and took the medallion. It was old, Spanish silver from the look of it. He held it up to the lantern light, examining the engravings. Coordinates were etched into one side. 34 degrees north, 106 degrees west. On the back, an inscription. Hayes Land Grant, 1821, 50,000 acres. "This is a land deed marker," Nathan said slowly. "Old Spanish, from before American annexation." "What does that mean?" "It means your father left you land, a lot of it, in your name." Tomas's eyes widened. "Land? 50,000 acres, if this is legitimate. That's worth a fortune, boy. Maybe $100,000. Maybe more if there's water or minerals." "But why didn't Father tell Mother?" "He probably wanted to secure it legally first, make sure the claim was solid before he said anything. But then," Nathan trailed off, "he died before he could." "Yeah." Tomas closed his hand around the medallion. "Will you help me? Keep it secret until we know what to do. Father said not to tell anyone, not yet." Nathan understood the weight of secrets, understood what it meant for this boy to trust him with something so important. "Yes," he said. "But eventually, we tell your mother. Family doesn't keep secrets from family. You understand?" "Yes." The boy hugged him then, sudden and fierce, and Nathan's arms came up automatically to hold him. It had been so long since he'd held a child, so long since anyone had trusted him with anything that mattered. When Tomas went back to the cabin, Nathan sat alone in the barn, turning the medallion over in his hands. 50,000 acres. That kind of land would explain a lot. Would explain why Kaya's husband had been killed. Would explain why riders might be watching the ranch. Would explain why this wasn't over. The next morning, Nathan rode the north boundary, checking for signs of trouble. He found them 3 miles from the cabin. Fresh horse tracks. 3 riders, all with shod horses. They'd stopped on a ridge overlooking his ranch and stayed there for a while. Long enough for the horses to leave droppings. Someone was watching them. He searched the area carefully and found a handkerchief caught on a mesquite branch. White linen with a monogram embroidered in blue thread. The letters W and H intertwined in a fancy script. He brought it back and showed it to Kaya. The color drained from her face. "William Hayes," she whispered. "Who's that?" "Daniel's father, a wealthy rancher from Texas. Owns the Triple H Ranch, 50,000 acres of prime grazing land and 3,000 head of cattle. Why would he be watching us? The children, they're Hayes blood, and Hayes don't leave their legacy to half-breeds." Nathan's jaw tightened. He disowned his son. He got no claim. "Rich men make their own claims." She was right, and they both knew it. The following afternoon, 3 men rode up to the cabin. They wore suits and ties, unusual for the frontier. City men, legal men, the kind who used paper and words as weapons instead of guns. Nathan was shoeing a horse when they arrived. He straightened slowly, wiping his hands on his pants. The leader dismounted first. 50 years old, maybe, with gray hair and cold eyes. "Mr. Cross, I'm Silas Grant, attorney from Austin. I'm here on behalf of William Hayes of the Triple H Ranch in Texas." "What business does a Texas rancher have in New Mexico?" "The children, Tomas and Lily Rivers. They're his legal grandchildren." Kaya stepped out of the cabin. "He never cared when Daniel was alive." Grant smiled, but it was the smile of a shark. Mr. Hayes deeply regrets his estrangement from his son. Now that Daniel has tragically passed, he wishes to make amends by providing for the children, giving them the life they deserve. They have the life they deserve, Kaya said. Grant looked around pointedly, at the small cabin, the dusty yard, the hard prairie stretching away in all directions. Living on charity in a bachelor's cabin? Hardly suitable for the Hayes heirs, ma'am. Nathan took a step forward. She's their mother. They stay with her. Ah, but that's the issue, you see. Grant reached into his jacket and pulled out folded papers. I have custody documents signed by Judge Morrison in Santa Fe. Mrs. Rivers, if we can even call her that, is deemed an unfit mother. No home, no income, no legal standing as a widow. That's horse shit, Nathan said. Is it? The law doesn't recognize Apache marriage, Mr. Cross. Without legal documentation of her marriage to Daniel Rivers, she has no parental rights whatsoever. He unfolded the papers. Furthermore, we have an affidavit stating that Daniel was mentally unfit when he allegedly married this woman, which makes any such marriage null and void. That's a lie, Kaya said. That's the law, ma'am. Nathan's hand moved toward the rifle leaning against the cabin wall. Get off my land. Grant's smile widened. We'll be back with the sheriff and a federal marshal. You have 48 hours to surrender the children voluntarily. Otherwise, we'll take them by force. And Mr. Cross? He mounted his horse. Threatening a legal officer? I'll add that to my report. Good day. They rode away, leaving dust and dread in their wake. Kaya stood frozen, her face pale. This isn't your fight. You've done enough. We'll run. Run where? He'll find you. Well, then what do we do? Nathan looked at her. At Tomas and Lily watching from the cabin door, their young faces scared and confused. At the 2 graves on the hill where his first family lay buried. We fight, he said, legally first. And if that fails, then we fight however we have to. Nathan, you could lose everything. Your ranch, your freedom, maybe your life. I already lost everything once. I won't do it again. Not while I'm still breathing. That evening, as storm clouds gathered on the horizon and thunder rumbled in the distance, Nathan and Kaya sat on the porch. The children were inside, sensing the tension, staying quiet. Finally, Kaya spoke. I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Okay? You've been alone for 3 years, turned away every woman, but you let me stay. You fight for us. You teach my children. She paused, gathering courage. You want a wife, Nathan Cross? Or just shelter? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Nathan stared out at the darkening prairie, at the storm moving closer. He thought about Sarah, about Emma, about 3 years of being dead inside. I don't know if I remember how to want anything anymore, he said finally. After Sarah, I built walls so thick, I forgot there was anything outside them. Then maybe it's time you remembered. What if I fail you? What if I can't protect you like I couldn't protect them? Then we fail together. But I'd rather fail trying to live than succeed at being dead. He turned to her then, and in the last light of day, he saw her clearly. Strong, brave, alive in a way he'd forgotten was possible. He reached out and took her hand, the first intentional touch between them. I want both, he said quietly. A wife, a family, a life. But only if it's you. Only if it's them. You sure?
Because if you say yes, I'll fight beside you, not behind you. I wouldn't have it any other way." Lightning flashed across the sky, and thunder followed immediately. The storm was close now. Nathan stood, pulling Kaya to her feet. He was about to say something more when he saw them. Torches. Multiple torches moving across the prairie toward his ranch. Not in 2 days. They'd come tonight. Sheriff Tom Brennan rode ahead of the group, his face grim in the flickering light. Behind him came a federal marshal, Silas Grant, and at least 6 armed men. Tom reined in his horse. "Nathan, I got a warrant. Federal warrant for the custody of Tomas and Lily Rivers." "That warrant's based on lies, Tom." Grant urged his horse forward. "Step aside, Mr. Cross. We're taking the children, now." Nathan stood his ground. Kaya moved beside him, Daniel's old bow in her hands. From the cabin window, he could see the children watching, terrified. "Over my dead body," Nathan said. Grant smiled. "That can be arranged." The first drops of rain began to fall. Samuel leaned forward in his chair, eyes wide. "You fought them? But they have the law on their side." Old Nathan took a long drink of his coffee, now cold again. The memories were as clear as if they'd happened yesterday instead of 40 years ago. "Sometimes the law is wrong, Samuel, and sometimes a man has to choose between what's legal and what's right. That night I chose right." The rain fell harder now, turning the dust to mud. Nathan stood on his porch, rifle in hand. Kaya beside him, her bow drawn. They'd sent the children to the storm cellar beneath the cabin, a small space Nathan had dug years ago for tornadoes. Tomas had protested, wanting to fight, but Kaya had been firm. "You protect your sister," she'd told him. "That's how you help." Now it was just the 2 of them, against 8 men and the supposed authority of the law. Federal Marshal James Reed sat straight in his saddle. A man in his 50s, with gray in his beard and a badge on his chest. He looked uncomfortable, his eyes moving between Nathan and the men behind him. "Mr. Cross," Reed called out, his voice carrying over the rain. "I have a federal warrant signed by Judge Morrison in Santa Fe. Interfering with its execution is a hanging offense." "That warrant's based on forged documents," Nathan shouted back. "Daniel Rivers married Kaya legally. I'll swear to it before any judge." Silas Grant urged his horse forward, staying carefully behind the marshal. "The testimony of a known recluse with a history of violence? Your word means nothing, Cross." "Then what about mine?" Tom Brennan spoke up, and every head turned toward him. The sheriff looked sick, his face pale even in the torchlight. "I know Daniel Rivers. Knew him for 5 years. He and Kaya were married proper. Had witnesses and everything. I can testify to that." Grant's smile vanished. "Sheriff Brennan, I suggest you remember our arrangement." "What arrangement?" Nathan demanded. Tom closed his eyes. "He paid me $1,000. My wife, she's dying. Consumption. The medicine costs $800. I took the money. Signed papers saying the marriage wasn't valid. I'm sorry, Nathan. I didn't think it would come to this." "You sold them out," Nathan said, and his voice was flat, cold. "I sold my soul," Tom replied, "but I'm done. No amount of money is worth this." The marshal looked at Tom, then at Grant. "You bribed a law officer?" "I provided financial assistance to a man in need," Grant said smoothly. "And he provided truthful testimony in return." "Truthful?" Kaya called out. "Or purchased?" Grant ignored her, focusing on Nathan. "Last chance, Cross. Hand over the children, and we'll forget this whole unpleasant business." "No." "Then you're choosing to die for 2 half-breed children who aren't even yours." Nathan raised his rifle. "I'm choosing to live for them. First time I've chosen to live for anything in 3 years." "So be it." Grant turned to the hired men behind him. "Take them. $500 each when it's done." The 6 hired guns spread out, dismounting. They were mercenaries, not lawmen. Men who killed for money and asked no questions. Nathan recognized the type. He'd fought alongside some during the war, fought against others after it. "This is murder," Tom said, but his voice was lost in the thunder. The first shot came from one of the hired guns, splintering wood from the porch post beside Nathan's head. He returned fire instantly, the Winchester kicking against his shoulder. The mercenary went down, clutching his chest. Then chaos erupted. Nathan worked the lever action on his rifle, firing methodically. One shot, one target, the way they'd taught him in the war. Beside him, Kaya's bow sang, the arrows flying silent and deadly through the rain. A man trying to circle around the cabin went down with an arrow through his throat. The marshal's horse reared, and Reed fell, landing hard in the mud. A bullet had grazed his leg, though Nathan couldn't tell whose shot had hit him. The marshal crawled behind a water trough, out of the fight. 2 more hired guns rushed the porch. Nathan shot one in the chest, but his rifle clicked empty. He grabbed the man's pistol as he fell, and used it to club the second attacker across the face. Bone crunched. The man went down, screaming. Kaya dropped her bow and pulled a hunting knife from her belt. A mercenary had made it onto the porch, and they grappled, his gun arm raised. She was smaller, but faster. The knife flashed once, twice, and he staggered back, blood pouring from his side. Then a gunshot cracked, and the mercenary fell. Tom Brennan stood in the rain, his service revolver smoking. "Tom!" Grant screamed. "What the hell are you doing?" "The right thing," Tom said. Finally, 3 of the hired guns were down. 2 more were wounded and retreating. The last one took one look at the carnage and spurred his horse away into the darkness, wanting no part of whatever this had become. Grant sat on his horse, face twisted with rage and fear. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small pistol, the kind gamblers carried, a Derringer. 2 shots. He aimed it at Kaya. Nathan saw it. Time seemed to slow, the way it had in battle. He saw Grant's finger tightening on the trigger, saw Kaya turning toward the threat, too slow, saw the rain falling between them like a curtain. He moved without thinking, throwing himself in front of her. The shot was small, almost polite, compared to the roar of rifles, but it hit like a hammer, punching into Nathan's left shoulder and spinning him around. He fell against Kaya, and they both went down. Kaya's scream cut through the storm. Her hand found her bow, found an arrow, drew and released in one smooth motion, pure instinct and rage. The arrow took Silas Grant in the chest, dead center. He looked down at it, surprised, then toppled from his horse. "Nathan!" Kaya cried, her hands pressing against his wound. "Nathan, stay with me!" Blood mixed with rain, turning the porch red. Nathan's vision blurred, but he could hear Lily screaming from the cellar, could hear Tomas shouting his name. Tom was there suddenly, ripping his shirt to make bandages. "Hold on, Nate. Just hold on." The marshal crawled over, his face gray with shock and pain. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be legal. Clean. "Nothing about this was legal," Tom said, wrapping Nathan's shoulder tight. "You got played, Reed. We all did." Nathan tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. His head felt full of cotton. His shoulder burned like someone had shoved a hot poker through it. "Kaya," he managed, finally.
She leaned close, her face hovering above his. Rain and tears mixed on her cheeks. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Sorry. Should have been faster." "You were fast enough, you beautiful fool." "Sarah. Emma. I'm sorry I wasn't there for them either." "Nathan, I'm not Sarah. And I'm not dying. You're not dying. Stay with me." "Asked you what I wanted, remember?" "Don't you dare. Don't you dare die on me now." "Wanted both, wife and shelter. But only if it's you." His eyes closed. The darkness was warm and soft, and for a moment he thought he could hear Emma laughing. Then someone was shaking him, hard, and Kaya's voice cut through the fog. "Nathan Cross, you open your eyes right now. You promised to teach my son ranching. You promised to teach my daughter to read. You don't get to break those promises." He opened his eyes, saw her face, saw the fear and fury there. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." Tomas climbed out of the cellar and ran to them, Lily close behind. The boy was crying openly now, no longer trying to be brave. "Is Nathan dead?" Lily sobbed. "No," Kaya said firmly. "He's going to be fine. He has to be." Tom knelt beside them. "We need to get him inside. Get that bleeding stopped proper." Together, they carried Nathan into the cabin and laid him on the bed. Kaya worked with swift efficiency, cleaning the wound with whiskey that made Nathan's whole body jerk. Tom held him down while she dug for the bullet. "It went through," she said finally. "Clean. Missed the bone. Missed the artery. He'll live if we can stop the infection." Marshal Reed limped to the door, supported by his horse. "I'll testify," he said. "Grant admitted the bribery, admitted the forgery. I heard it all. I'll testify to everything." "Your career's over if you do," Tom said. "Better than living with this blood on my hands." While Nathan drifted in and out of consciousness, Tomas made a decision. He pulled the medallion from under his shirt and showed it to Tom. "Nathan said this is important. A land grant. Can you help?" Tom took the medallion, held it up to the lamplight, and his eyes widened. Jesus Christ. This is a Spanish land grant, validated by Mexico in 1821, recognized by the United States in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. "What does that mean?" Kaya asked. "It means Tomas legally owns 50,000 acres in southern New Mexico, worth at least $100,000, maybe more." Understanding dawned on Kaya's face. That's why Hayes wanted them. Not for family, for inheritance. "This changes everything," Tom said. "With this, you can fight Hayes in court and win." Nathan woke 3 days later. The fever had broken during the night, and when he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Kaya sitting beside the bed, her head resting on her arms, asleep. He tried to sit up, and the pain in his shoulder made him gasp. Kaya woke instantly. "Easy," she said, helping him lie back. "You're healing, but you're not healed." "How long?" 3 days. You had us scared." "The children?" "Safe, sleeping. They've been here every day, watching you." "Grant?" "Dead, buried. The others, too." She touched his face. "You saved us, Nathan. You saved all of us." We saved each other. Over the next 3 weeks, Nathan healed slowly. Kaya refused to leave his side for the first week, and when he finally convinced her to sleep in the loft with the children, she still checked on him every few hours. Tom came by daily with news. Marshal Reed had filed a full report. The federal warrant was declared invalid. Judge Morrison, who'd signed it,
was under investigation. William Hayes had been summoned to appear before a territorial court. "Reed's testimony is solid," Tom said. "Combined with the land grant medallion, there's no way Hayes can win custody." The hearing took place 6 weeks after the shooting in a courtroom in Santa Fe. Nathan, still wearing his arm in a sling, sat beside Kaya. Tomas and Lily sat behind them, dressed in new clothes that Mrs. Henderson had given them as an apology. William Hayes sat on the opposite side. He was 60 years old, a big man gone to fat, with cold eyes that held no warmth even when he looked at his grandchildren. Marshal Reed testified first, then Tom, then Nathan. By the time they finished, the judge's expression was thunderous. "Mr. Hayes," Judge Morrison said, "this court finds no legal basis for your custody claim. Furthermore, you are hereby ordered to pay $5,000 in damages to Mrs. Kaya Rivers and barred from any future contact with the family. If you attempt to pursue this matter further, I will personally see you prosecuted for fraud and conspiracy." Hayes stood, his face purple with rage. He looked at Nathan across the courtroom. "This isn't over, Cross." "Yes, it is," Nathan replied quietly. "Your son chose love over your money. Honor his choice." Hayes left without another word, and Nathan never saw him again. The months that followed brought changes. Using the money from the settlement and the sale of 40,000 acres to the Santa Fe Railroad, they bought Nathan's ranch outright and combined it with the 10,000 acres Tomas kept from his inheritance. The remaining $83,000 went into a bank account for the children's future. Nathan taught Tomas everything he knew about ranching: how to brand cattle, how to break horses, how to read the land and the sky. The boy learned fast, his young mind soaking up knowledge like dry earth soaked up rain. Kaya started a small school on the ranch for Lily and 3 children from neighboring farms. She taught reading and writing and arithmetic, but also Apache language and customs, keeping that part of their heritage alive. The community of Socorro slowly accepted them. Some never would, but most came around when they saw how hard Nathan and Kaya worked, how well they treated the children, how they helped neighbors during the drought that hit that fall. Mrs. Henderson became one of their strongest supporters, bringing supplies for the school and telling anyone who'd listen that she'd been wrong about Kaya, that the woman was stronger than all of them combined. One evening, 6 months after the shooting, Nathan led Kaya to the north boundary of the ranch, to the fence he'd been repairing the day she first arrived. "I built these fences 3 years ago," he said. "Thought I was keeping the world out. Really, I was keeping myself in. And now? Now I want something different." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring he'd carved from turquoise, polished smooth and set in silver. "Kaya Rivers, you asked me if I wanted a wife or shelter. I want both. But more than that, I want you. I want to raise those children together. I want to build a legacy that lasts. Will you marry me?" She took the ring, held it up to catch the last light of day. "You sure about this, cowboy? I come with a lot of baggage." "So do I. 2 graves on that hill. But they don't own me anymore. You do." "Then yes, I'll marry you, Nathan Cross." They kissed as the sun set, their first real kiss, and from the house, Lily clapped and Tomas smiled, both children finally understanding that they were home. The wedding was simple. Tom officiated, Marshal Reed came, and Mrs. Henderson, and Pastor Miller with his daughter Catherine, who'd found happiness with a farmer from the next county. 30 people in total, which felt like a crowd after 3 years of solitude. Nathan's vows were short.
I promise to build fences to keep you safe, but never to keep you out. I promise to honor your past, your people, your strength. I promise to be the father Tomas and Lily deserve, and the husband you chose. Kaya's were simpler still. I promise to remind you every day that you still have a heart. I promise to stand beside you, not behind you. I promise to make this ranch a home, not just a shelter. And I promise to love you, broken pieces and all. When it was done, Nathan looked up at the hill where Sarah and Emma lay buried. He nodded once, a goodbye and a thank you, then turned to his new family and didn't look back. Old Nathan finished his story as the sun began to set on this day in 1918. Samuel sat quietly, processing everything he'd heard. So, that's how you and Grandma Kaya met. That's how we survived. How we built this. Nathan gestured at the ranch around them, now 15,000 acres of prime grazing land. Your Uncle Tomas runs it now with your father. Lily married a good man. They have the north section. This will all be yours someday. Grandpa, I'm still scared. About the war. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. But don't let it make you dead inside. I did that for 3 years. Worst years of my life. What if I don't come back? Then you lived fully till the end. But if you do come back, and I believe you will, don't spend years building walls. Find someone to tear them down with. The screen door opened, and Kaya stepped out. 68 now, but still beautiful, her silver hair braided down her back. She carried a tray with fresh coffee and pie. Nathan, stop scaring the boy with your war stories. Just telling him the truth. The truth is that love makes you brave. Fear makes you careful. You need both. She handed Samuel a slice of pie. Now eat. You're too skinny for the army. They sat together on the porch, 3 generations watching the sun paint the sky red and gold. Nathan looked at the north fence, still standing after 40 years. Samuel, he said quietly, some fences keep danger out, but the best ones? They keep love in. That fence I built in 1878 still stands. Not because it's strong, because we chose to protect what's inside. The boy nodded, understanding more than Nathan had hoped he would. 2 weeks later, Samuel Cross boarded a train heading east. He survived the Great War, came home in 1919, and married in 20. He had 3 children and ran the ranch with his Uncle Tomas until 1955. Nathan Cross died peacefully in 1925 at the age of 79, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. His last words were to Kaya, and no one else ever knew what he said. But she smiled through her tears and whispered back, I know. I always knew. Kaya Rivers Cross lived to 95, passing away in 1985. The ranch remained in the Cross family, just as Nathan had promised it would. And on the north boundary, the fence he built in the summer of 1878 still stands, weathered but unbroken, protecting what matters most. The first winter came hard and fast that year. By November, snow blanketed the ranch in white, and the temperature dropped so low that water froze in the buckets overnight. Nathan stood at the window of the cabin, now expanded with 2 additional rooms, watching Tomas split firewood in the yard. The boy had grown in the 6 months since the shooting. Not just taller, though he'd gained a good 3 inches, but stronger in ways that had nothing to do with muscle. He moved with purpose now, his movements confident and sure. The grief was still there, Nathan could see it in quiet moments, but it no longer defined him. Lily burst through the door, her cheeks red from cold, her arms full of eggs from the chicken coop they'd built in September. "Mama, I got 12 today. That's more than yesterday." Kaya looked up from the stove where she was making bread. "Good work, little one. Set them on the table and wash your hands. Breakfast is almost ready."
Nathan watched them, this family that had somehow become his, and felt something he'd thought was dead forever. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, because happiness felt too fragile, too temporary, but contentment. The quiet satisfaction of knowing you were where you were supposed to be. "Nathan?" Kaya's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "You're thinking too loud again." He smiled. She'd learned to read his silences, could tell the difference between comfortable quiet and the kind that meant his mind was churning. "Just thinking about how different this place feels. Used to be so empty you could hear your own heartbeat. Now I can barely hear myself think." "Is that a complaint?" "No, it's a blessing." She crossed to him, flower on her hands, and kissed him softly. Even after 6 months of marriage, the intimacy still surprised him. The casual touches, the shared glances, the way she fit against his side like she'd always belonged there. "Good answer, Cowboy." After breakfast, Nathan and Tomas rode out to check the cattle. The herd had grown to 70 head now, thanks to some smart trading Nathan had done in the fall. They'd also bought 4 more horses, including a young stallion Tomas had named Thunder because of the sound his hooves made when he ran. "How many do you think we'll lose to winter?" Tomas asked as they rode through the snow. "If we're lucky, none. If we're not, maybe 5 or 6. Depends on how bad it gets. Uncle Tom said this winter's supposed to be mild." Uncle Tom. The boy had started calling the sheriff that back in October, after Tom had spent 3 Sundays in a row helping them build the addition to the cabin. Tom's wife had passed away in September, and the ranch had become a refuge for him, a place where grief wasn't the only thing to talk about. "Tom's been wrong about the weather before," Nathan said. "We prepare for the worst and hope for the best." They found the cattle clustered near the spring, which hadn't frozen yet, thanks to the warmer water flowing up from underground. Nathan taught Tomas how to count them, how to spot signs of illness or injury, how to identify which cows were pregnant and likely to calve in spring. "That one there," Nathan pointed, "the longhorn with the crooked horn. She's the matriarch. Where she goes, the others follow. You always keep an eye on her. She gets spooked, the whole herd goes." "Like the leader." "Exactly. Every group has one. Cattle, horses, people. The trick is figuring out who it is and making sure they trust you." On the ride back, Tomas asked the question Nathan had been waiting for. "When are we going to check the land?" "The 50,000 acres. Spring. Ground's too frozen now, and we don't know the exact boundaries yet. The surveyor's coming out in April to map it proper." "What if it's not good land? What if there's no water or grass?" "Then we sell it anyway and take what we can get." "But your father was smart, Tomas. He wouldn't have held on to that deed if the land was worthless." "Do you think he knew that he was going to die?" Nathan considered his answer carefully. The boy deserved honesty, but also hope. "I think he knew life was dangerous, that loving your mother and building a family between 2 worlds put a target on his back. But I also think he believed the risk was worth it, that you and Lily were worth anything. I wish I could remember more about him. It's only been 7 months, but already his face is getting fuzzy in my head." "That's normal. Happens to everyone. But you know what doesn't fade? The lessons he taught you, the way he made you feel, the values he passed on. That's the part of him that lives forever." When they got back to the ranch, they found a wagon in the yard. Mrs. Henderson and 3 other women from town stood on the porch, talking animatedly with Kaya. Lily sat at their feet, playing with a new doll. "Looks like we got company," Nathan said. "The church ladies," Tomas groaned. "They're nice,
but they talk so much." Nathan laughed. 6 months ago, these same women wouldn't have given Kaya the time of day. Now here they were, bringing gifts and gossip and acceptance. Mrs. Henderson spotted Nathan and waved him over. "Nathan Cross, your wife tells me you've got 70 head of cattle now. You'll need help come spring roundup." "I'll manage." "Nonsense. My husband and I will send our 2 boys. And the Martins said they'd help too. That's 6 strong backs right there." "I appreciate it, but I can pay for help if I need it." "This isn't about payment. This is about community. You helped the Johnsons last month when their barn burned. You gave Tom Brennan a place to grieve when his wife passed. Now we help you. That's how it works." Nathan looked at Kaya, who smiled and shrugged. "I tried to tell her no. She doesn't listen." "Smart woman, your wife," Mrs. Henderson said. "You should listen to her more often." After the women left, Kaya pulled Nathan aside. "We need to talk about Lily." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, but she's 7 now, and she needs more schooling than I can give her here. Reading and writing, yes, but mathematics, geography, science. She's smart, Nathan, really smart. She deserves a proper education. There's a school in Socorro where they'll call her a half-breed and make her sit in the back, where she'll learn that she's not good enough because of who her mother is." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Then what do you want to do?" "I want to expand my school. Bring in a real teacher from Santa Fe, someone trained, someone who'll teach all the children the same, regardless of who their parents are." "That'll cost money." "We have money, $83,000, sitting in a bank. We could use $500 to build a proper schoolhouse and hire a teacher for a year. It's Tomas's money, his inheritance. And I'm his mother. I decide how it's spent until he's old enough to decide for himself. Besides, what good is land and cattle if our children can't read contracts or do mathematics? Education is an investment." She was right, and Nathan knew it. "We'll need to talk to Tomas, get his blessing." "Already did. He thinks it's a great idea. Says his father always wanted him to be educated." Nathan shook his head, smiling. "You've got this all figured out, don't you?" "I've had 6 months to think about it. And, Nathan, I want the schoolhouse on our land. I want it to be open to any child, regardless of background. Apache, Mexican, white. Everyone. That'll cause talk. Let them talk. We've survived worse than gossip." They broke ground on the schoolhouse in March, as soon as the snow melted enough to dig. It was a community effort. Tom brought lumber from town. The Henderson boys helped with the framing. Even Pastor Miller showed up with tools and his blessing. "Never thought I'd see the day," the pastor said as they raised the first wall. "A school that welcomes everyone. It's what this territory needs." The building went up in 3 weeks. One large room with windows on 3 sides to let in light, a wood stove for heat, benches for the children, and a desk for the teacher. Kaya had written to a teaching college in Santa Fe, and they'd sent a young woman named Miss Sarah Blackwell. 23 years old, fresh out of school, and determined to make a difference. "Why did you want to come here?" Nathan asked her when she arrived in April. "Because I believe education is the great equalizer, Mr. Cross, and because Mrs. Cross's letter was the most compelling thing I've ever read. She wrote about her children, yes, but also about the future, about building something that lasts. I want to be part of that." The school opened on May 1st with 8 students, Lily and Tomas, the Henderson twins, 2 Mexican children from a farm to the south, and 2 Apache children from the Mescalero camp, sent by Kaya's mother's sister, who'd finally reached out after hearing about the school. On opening day, Nathan stood at the back of the room and watched Miss Blackwell teach. She treated every child the same, asked them questions, listened to their answers, corrected them gently when they were wrong, and praised them enthusiastically when they were right. Lily's hand shot up constantly. Tomas was quieter, but no less engaged. By the end of the first week, all 8 children could recite their alphabet and count to 100. "This is good," Kaya said that night as they lay in bed. "This is what Daniel wanted, what I want. Our children growing up educated, prepared for whatever world they'll inherit." "It's more than good. It's revolutionary."
You know that, right? What you're doing here.
"I'm just teaching children. You're changing the future." In late April, the surveyor arrived with maps and instruments. His name was Charles Webb, a meticulous man in his 50s who'd spent 30 years mapping the territory. "This land grant is legitimate," he confirmed after 3 days of study. "Spanish origin, validated by Mexico, recognized by the United States. 10,000 acres in the valley, 40,000 in the foothills. Good water, good grass. There's even a creek that runs year-round." "What's it worth?" Nathan asked. "Conservatively, $2 an acre. But if the railroad comes through, which I hear they're planning, could be $5 or even $10 an acre. You're sitting on a fortune, son." They rode out to see it, all 4 of them, plus Tom, who'd become an unofficial member of the family. The land was everything Webb had promised. Rolling hills covered in grass, stands of cottonwood and juniper, the creek running clear and cold through the center. "All of this belongs to us?" Lily whispered, looking around in wonder. "This is Tomas's," Nathan corrected. "Your father left it to him." "But we're family," Tomas said, "so it's ours, all of ours." They camped there for 3 days, exploring every corner. Nathan showed Tomas where he'd build line shacks for cowboys, where to dig wells, where the cattle would graze best. It was like looking at the future spread out before them in grass and sky. On the 3rd night, sitting around the campfire, Tom cleared his throat. "I got something to tell you all. Been putting it off, but it's time." Nathan looked up, concerned by his friend's tone. "What is it?" "I'm stepping down as sheriff. Gave my notice last week." "Why? You're good at the job." "I'm tired, Nathan. Tired of seeing the worst in people. Tired of enforcing laws I don't always agree with. My wife's gone. My kids are grown and moved east. There's nothing keeping me in that job except habit." "So what will you do?" Tom looked around at the land, at the family gathered by the fire. "I was hoping you might have use for another ranch hand, someone to help manage all this new property. I know my way around cattle, and I'm too old to cause much trouble." Nathan and Kaya exchanged glances. They'd talked about this possibility, hoped for it even. "We can't pay much," Nathan said. "Not until we get the ranch fully operational." "Don't need much, just a place to belong." "Then welcome to the family, Tom. Official-like this time." They shook hands, and Lily jumped up to hug Tom's legs. "Does this mean you're my uncle for real now?" "I suppose it does, little one." That summer, they moved half the herd to the new land, built 2 line shacks, and hired 3 cowboys to help manage it all. The ranch, now officially called the Cross Rivers Ranch, combining both Nathan and Kaya's names, sprawled across 26,000 acres total. It was more than Nathan had ever dreamed of building, more than he'd thought possible after Sarah and Emma died. Some mornings he woke up convinced it was all a dream,
that he'd open his eyes and find himself alone in that empty cabin again. But then Kaya would stir beside him, or he'd hear Lily singing in the kitchen, or Tomas would call from the yard needing help with some task. And he'd remember this was real. This was his life now. In August, on their first anniversary, Nathan took Kaya back to the clearing where they'd met. The wickiup frames were long gone, reclaimed by nature, but the graves remained. 9 mounds of earth marked by stones. "I come here sometimes," Kaya admitted, "when I need to remember." Remember what? That survival isn't the same as living. That Daniel would want us to be happy, not just safe. Nathan took her hand. "Are you happy?" "More than I ever thought I'd be again." "You?" "Yeah. Took me a while to recognize it, but yeah." They stood together in the silence, honoring the dead while celebrating the living. Then they rode home to the ranch where their children waited, where Tom was teaching Tomas how to break a horse, where Lily was reading aloud to Miss Blackwell from a book about ancient Rome. Home. It had taken Nathan 35 years to truly understand what that word meant. Not a place, not a building, but people, family. The ones who stayed when staying was hard. The ones who fought beside you when the world said to give up. That night, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Tomas came out and sat between them. "Nathan, I've been thinking." "About what?" "When I'm grown, when I run this ranch, I want to do it right, the way my father would have wanted. Fair to everyone, good to the land, a place where people belong." "You'll do it better than right," Nathan said. "You'll do it better than I ever could." "Will you teach me? Everything? I know I'm only 10, but I want to learn it all." Nathan looked at Kaya, who nodded. "I'll teach you everything I know, son. And when I run out of things to teach, we'll figure out the rest together." Tomas smiled and leaned against Nathan's shoulder. Lily came out and climbed into Kaya's lap. The 4 of them sat there as darkness fell, as the first stars appeared, as the prairie settled into night. Somewhere on the hill behind the cabin, 2 cottonwood trees stood watch over 2 graves. Sarah and Emma, resting forever in the land Nathan had built for them. He didn't talk to them anymore, didn't visit as often, but he thought about them, remembered them, thanked them for the love they'd given him, even if it had been cut too short. But his life was here now, with these people, this family he'd found in the ruins of someone else's tragedy. This second chance he'd almost been too broken to take. "What are you thinking?" Kaya asked softly. "That I'm the luckiest man alive. Even with a bullet scar and a wife who talks back? Especially because of those things." She laughed, and the sound carried across the prairie like music. Tomas fell asleep against Nathan's shoulder. Lily dozed in her mother's arms, and Nathan Cross, who'd spent 3 years living like a ghost, felt more alive than he ever had. The fence still stood on the north boundary, weathered but strong. And inside it, love grew wild and deep, taking root in soil that had once known only grief. This was legacy. This was home. This was everything worth fighting for. The years moved like the seasons, each one bringing its own gifts and challenges. By the spring of 1881, 3 years after Nathan had found Kaya in that burning clearing, the Cross Rivers Ranch had become something none of them could have imagined. The school now had 15 students, with Miss Blackwell teaching 5 days a week. They'd had to expand the building twice, adding a small library and a second room for the older children. Lily, now 9, read at a level Miss Blackwell said was remarkable for her age.
She devoured every book they could get her, from Shakespeare to scientific journals Tom brought from Santa Fe. Tomas, at 12, had grown tall and lean, his shoulders broadening with the work of the ranch. He could rope a steer, break a horse, and keep accounts better than most grown men. But it was his questions that impressed Nathan most. "Why do we brand on the left hip instead of the right?" Tomas asked one morning as they worked the spring calves. "Tradition, mostly. Started with the Spanish. Left side's easier for most right-handed ropers to see." "But wouldn't the right shoulder be more visible when they're grazing?" Nathan stopped and looked at the boy. "You know, I never thought of that."
You might be right. Can we try it? Brand the next season's calves on the right shoulder and see if it makes a difference. Yeah, we can try that. These moments happened more and more. Tomas questioning the way things had always been done, looking for better methods, thinking ahead. Nathan recognized it as the mind of someone who'd one day run not just a ranch, but an empire. The ranch itself had prospered beyond Nathan's wildest expectations. They now ran 300 head of cattle across the combined properties, with 20 horses and a reputation for fair dealing that brought buyers from as far as Denver and San Antonio. Tom had proven invaluable, his experience and steady hand helping to build something that would last. But prosperity brought its own problems. In June of that year, a man named Robert Cartwright rode onto the ranch. He was 45, well-dressed, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He represented a cattle syndicate out of Chicago, he said, investors looking to expand into New Mexico territory. "I'll be direct, Mr. Cross," Cartwright said, as they sat in what was now Nathan's office, a small room added to the main house. "My clients want to buy your operation. All of it. The land, the cattle, the buildings. We're prepared to offer $80,000. Nathan leaned back in his chair. "That's a generous offer. It's a fair offer. More than fair, considering how remote you are out here." "I'm not interested in selling." Cartwright's smile tightened. "Perhaps you should discuss it with your family. $80,000 could set you all up nicely. You could move to Santa Fe, maybe even California. Your wife could have an easier life. Your children could attend real schools." "My wife has the life she wants. My children attend a school that's as real as any in the territory. And this ranch isn't just mine to sell. It belongs to all of us." "I see." Cartwright stood, brushing dust from his trousers. "Well, if you change your mind, you know where to find me. Though I should mention, my clients don't take rejection well. They're used to getting what they want." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. Good day, Mr. Cross." After Cartwright left, Nathan sat in his office for a long time, thinking. He'd dealt with men like that during the war. Men who saw everything as something to be owned, controlled, exploited. Men who believed money could buy anything, including things that shouldn't be for sale. That evening, he called a family meeting. Tom, Kaya, and Tomas gathered in the main room. Lily sat on the floor, supposedly playing with her doll, but listening to every word. "A man came today with an offer to buy the ranch," Nathan began. $80,000 for everything." Kaya's eyes widened. "That's more than we paid for all of it." "It is, but there's something about him I don't trust. The way he talked, it felt more like a threat than an offer." "What do you want to do?" Tom asked. "I want to say no. Build what we've started. Pass it on to these kids. But it's not just my decision." Tomas spoke up, his young voice serious. "My father died protecting our home. He believed some things are worth more than money.
I think this ranch is one of those things. You're 12 years old, Nathan said gently. That's a lot of pressure to carry. I'm 12, but I'm not stupid. I see what we've built here. The school, the community, the way people help each other. If we sell to some Chicago syndicate, all that goes away. They'll fire Tom, close the school, probably drive everyone off the land who doesn't work for them. Nathan looked at Kaya. What do you think? I think our son is wise beyond his years. And I think if we run from this, we'll spend the rest of our lives running. We stay. Tom? The former sheriff pulled out his pipe, took his time lighting it. I've seen what happens when big money comes into a territory. They don't care about the land or the people. They extract what they can and move on. I say we tell them no, and we prepare for whatever comes next. Then we're agreed. Nathan looked around at his family. We stay, we fight if we have to, and we protect what's ours. What came next started small. Fences cut in the night, cattle scattered, a small fire in the hay barn that Tom caught before it spread. Nothing big enough to bring the law, but enough to send a message. Nathan and Tom started riding night patrols, taking turns watching over the property. They hired 2 more hands, men Tom vouched for, veterans like themselves who knew how to handle trouble. Then, in August, things escalated. Nathan and Tomas were moving cattle in the north pasture when they heard gunfire. Not the crack of a rifle, but the rapid fire of multiple weapons. They spurred their horses toward the sound and found 3 of Cartwright's men shooting at their cattle, deliberately wounding them so they'd have to be put down. "Stop!" Nathan shouted, reaching for his rifle. The men turned their guns on him. Nathan's horse reared, and Tomas's scream cut through the air as one of the men took aim at Nathan's chest. The shot never came. Tom appeared from behind a rock outcropping, his own rifle raised. "Drop them," Tom said calmly. "Right now, or I drop you." The men hesitated. Tom fired once, kicking up dust at their feet. "That was your warning. There won't be another." They dropped their weapons and rode off, leaving Nathan and Tomas breathing hard, hearts pounding. "You okay?" Tom asked. Nathan nodded, then looked at Tomas. The boy's face was white, his hands shaking on the reins. "Come here, son." Tomas dismounted, and Nathan pulled him close, feeling the boy's whole body trembling. "I thought they were going to kill you," Tomas whispered. "But they didn't. Tom was there. We're okay." What if next time we're not? It was a fair question, one Nathan didn't have a good answer for. That night, after the children were in bed, Nathan and Kaya sat on the porch. The stars were bright overhead, but Nathan couldn't enjoy them. His mind kept replaying the moment when that gun had been pointed at his chest, when he'd thought about dying and leaving Kaya and the children alone. "You're scared," Kaya said. Not a question, a statement. "Yeah. Good. Fear means you're paying attention. But Nathan, we can't let them win. If we give up now, everything we've built means nothing." "I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about you and the kids. What if they come to the house? What if they hurt you to get to me?" "Then we fight. Together. Like we did before. Last time I took a bullet, nearly died. What if next time I'm not so lucky? What if it's you? What if it's one of the children?" She took his hand, held it tight. "Then we honor them by not giving up, by finishing what we started. Nathan, my first husband died protecting his family. I won't dishonor his memory by running from mine." He knew she was right, but knowing and accepting were 2 different things. The next day, Nathan rode into Socorro and sent a telegram to the territorial governor's office. He detailed everything that had happened, asked for help, for protection, for justice. 3 days later, he received a reply. Insufficient evidence. Resolve disputes through local law enforcement. Tom laughed bitterly when Nathan showed him the telegram. Local law enforcement. That would be me, except I quit. And the new sheriff is on Cartwright's payroll. I've seen him drinking with those same men who shot at your cattle. So we're on our own. Looks like. But they weren't alone. When word spread through the community about what was happening, people showed up. The Henderson family, Pastor Miller and 5 men from his congregation, 3 Mexican families from the southern farms, even 2 warriors from the Mescalero camp, sent by Kaya's aunt with a message, "Family protects family." They set up a watch system, rotating guards around the clock, built elevated platforms near the house and barn where men could see approaching riders from far off, stocked ammunition and supplies. It felt like preparing for war. In many ways, it was. Cartwright came himself in September, riding up to the house in a fancy carriage with 2 armed guards. "Mr. Cross," he called out, "may we speak?" Nathan stepped onto the porch, rifle in his hands, but not pointed at anyone. Tom stood beside him, and behind them, through the window, Kaya watched with her own weapon ready. "Make it quick. My clients are losing patience. They've authorized me to increase the offer. $100,000. Final offer." "No. Mr. Cross, surely you realize you can't win this. We have unlimited resources, unlimited patience. Eventually, you'll have to sell, or we'll simply wait for you to fail and buy from whoever comes after you. Or maybe your clients will realize I'm not selling and move on to easier targets." Cartwright's smile vanished. "There are no easier targets. This is prime land, and we want it. One way or another, we'll have it. Then I guess we'll see who's more stubborn." After Cartwright left, Tom said what they were both thinking. "This isn't over. He's going to make a real move soon. Something big." "I know. We need to be ready." What Nathan didn't know was that the move would come from an unexpected direction. 2 weeks later, a government land surveyor arrived with federal marshals. He claimed there was a dispute about the boundaries of the land grant, that portions of it overlapped with public domain land. He'd been sent to conduct a new survey. "The original survey was done 3 years ago," Nathan protested. "Everything was verified legal. That survey is being contested. My orders come directly from Washington." They watched helplessly as the surveyor spent 2 weeks mapping the property. When he finished, he delivered his report. 40% of Tomas's land grant was actually public domain, available for homesteading by anyone who filed a claim. "That's impossible," Tom said. "I saw the original documents. They were clear." Perhaps the original documents were in error. Regardless, this is the official federal determination. Within days, 20 men filed homestead claims on the disputed land. Every single one of them worked for Cartwright's syndicate. Nathan and Tom rode to Santa Fe, meeting with lawyers and bureaucrats, trying to fight the decision. But every door was closed, every official sympathetic, but unable to help. Money had changed hands. Influence had been purchased. The system was rigged. They returned home defeated, only to find Kaya waiting with unexpected news. "While you were gone, I did some research of my own. Miss Blackwell helped me. We went through all of Daniel's papers, everything he left behind." She spread documents across the kitchen table, old letters, receipts, journal entries. Daniel knew his father would come for the children eventually, so he built a case. documented everything: the land grant's history, witness statements about his marriage to me, even a will, properly notarized, leaving everything to Tomas and specifically excluding William Hayes from any claim. "How does this help with the federal survey?" Nathan asked. "It doesn't. But look at this." She pulled out a faded newspaper clipping from 1870. William Hayes was involved in a land fraud case in Texas. He got away with it, but barely. His reputation was damaged. If we can prove he's behind this current fraud, using Cartwright as a front, we can destroy him. Tom leaned forward. "How do we prove it?" "We make Cartwright talk. Or we follow the money. Chicago syndicate, my ass. I bet every dollar traces back to Hayes." Nathan looked at his wife with new appreciation. "When did you become a detective?" "When someone threatened my family. Again." Over the next month, they built their case. Tom used his old law enforcement connections to track financial records. Miss Blackwell wrote letters to newspapers, detailing what was happening and asking questions about land fraud in New Mexico territory. Kaya reached out to other ranchers who'd been targeted by similar schemes, collecting stories and evidence. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Cartwright's syndicate had tried this in 3 other territories. Each time, the land had ended up in William Hayes's hands. Each time, the original owners had been driven off through legal manipulation and intimidation. They compiled everything into a package and sent it to 5 newspapers: Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Denver, San Francisco, and Washington. Along with it, they included a letter signed by 30 families who'd been affected. The story broke in November. "Cattle Baron's Land Grab Scheme Exposed," ran the headline in the Denver Post. Within days, federal investigators descended on the territory. Cartwright fled. The fake homestead claims were invalidated, and William Hayes, already barred from contact with the family, now faced federal charges for fraud. The case would take years to fully resolve, but the immediate threat was over. The ranch was safe. On Thanksgiving Day, 1881, they gathered around a table that had been expanded to seat 20. Family, friends, neighbors, all those who'd stood with them during the darkest days. Nathan stood to say grace, something he'd never been comfortable with before, but today felt different. "I'm not good with speeches," he began, "but I want to say thank you to every person in this room. 3 years ago, I was alone, half dead inside, convinced my life was over. Then this woman and these children came into my world and reminded me what it means to be alive, what it means to fight for something bigger than yourself." He looked at Kaya, at Tomas, at Lily, at Tom and Miss Blackwell, and all the faces around the table. This ranch isn't just land and cattle. It's family. It's community. It's everything worth protecting. So thank you for standing with us, for believing in what we're building here, for being part of this family. They ate and laughed and told stories late into the night. And when everyone had gone home, when the house was quiet again, Nathan walked out to the north fence one more time. The fence still stood, weathered, repaired in places, but standing, just like them. The winter of 1882 brought the heaviest snows New Mexico had seen in 20 years. Drifts piled 6 feet high against the barn, and the temperature stayed below freezing for weeks. Nathan and Tom worked around the clock, keeping the cattle alive, breaking ice on the water troughs, hauling hay through snowdrifts that reached the horses' chests. But inside the house, there was warmth. Kaya had discovered she was pregnant in November, and by February, her belly had begun to show. Nathan watched her with a mixture of joy and terror he couldn't quite name. "You're staring again," she said one evening as they sat by the fire. Tomas and Lily were upstairs doing schoolwork,
and the house was quiet except for the wind howling outside. "Can't help it. You're carrying my child. Our child. And yes, I know it scares you. Everything scares me now. What if something goes wrong? What if I lose you like I lost Sarah?" She took his hand and placed it on her belly. "Feel that? That's life, Nathan. Strong and stubborn, just like its parents. This baby is going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. We're all going to be fine." He wanted to believe her, tried to believe her. But late at night, when she was asleep and he lay awake listening to her breathe, the old fears crept back in. The memories of finding Sarah and Emma, the certainty that anything he loved would be taken from him. Tom found him in the barn one of those sleepless nights, sitting in the dark with his head in his hands. "Can't sleep?" Never could when something important was happening. War was the same way. Night before a battle, I'd be wide awake, thinking about all the ways it could go wrong. Tom sat down beside him on the hay bale. "You know what the difference is between you now and you 3 years ago?" "What?" 3 years ago, you'd already decided you'd lost. You were just going through the motions, waiting for it to be official. Now you're scared because you have something to lose. That's progress, Nathan. Doesn't feel like progress. Feels like torture. That's what love is. Beautiful torture. The best kind. The baby came in late April, on a morning when the wildflowers were just beginning to bloom across the prairie. Nathan had ridden to town for supplies, and when he returned, he found Doc Morrison's wagon in the yard. His heart stopped. He ran into the house to find Tom blocking the stairs. "Easy," Tom said. "Everything's fine. Doc says she's doing great. Should be any time now." "How long has she been laboring?" "Since dawn. It's only been a few hours." Hours. Each minute felt like an eternity. Nathan paced the main room like a caged animal, while Tomas tried to read, and Lily clung to Miss Blackwell, who'd come over to help with the children. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, Doc Morrison came down the stairs, wiping his hands on a towel. "Congratulations, Nathan. You have a son." Nathan's legs nearly gave out. "Kaya?" "Tired but healthy. Strong woman, your wife. Want to meet your boy?" He climbed the stairs on shaking legs and entered the bedroom. Kaya lay propped up on pillows, her hair damp with sweat but smiling. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a quilt. "Come here," she said softly. Nathan approached like he was walking on glass, afraid one wrong move would shatter everything. When he reached the bed, Kaya pulled back the quilt to reveal a red, wrinkled face with a shock of dark hair. "He's perfect," Nathan whispered. "He has your nose. Poor thing." He laughed, surprised he still could. "What should we name him?" "I was thinking Daniel, after my first husband. If that's okay with you." Nathan thought about it. Thought about the man who'd loved Kaya first, who'd given his life protecting her and the children. A man Nathan had never met, but respected deeply. "Daniel Cross," he said. "Yeah, that's good." Tomas and Lily crowded into the room, eager to meet their new brother. Lily climbed onto the bed carefully, peering at the baby with wide eyes. "He's so small," she said. "You were smaller," Kaya told her. "Can I hold him?" "When you're sitting down, yes." They spent the evening as a family, passing baby Daniel around, marveling at his tiny fingers and the way he yawned. Tom stood in the doorway, watching with a smile that held both joy and sadness. His own children were grown and gone, his wife dead.
But here, in this house, he'd found something like family again. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Nathan sat in the rocking chair beside Kaya's bed, holding his son. The baby was asleep, his breathing soft and even. Nathan studied his face in the lamplight, memorizing every detail. "I'm terrified," he admitted quietly. "I know. What if I can't protect him? What if something happens?" "Then we face it together, like everything else. Nathan, look at me." He met her eyes. "You are not the same man who lost Sarah and Emma. That man was alone, unprepared, caught off guard. You're none of those things now. You have family. You have friends. You have people who will fight beside you. And you have experience. You know what to watch for, what to prepare for." "But I'm still scared." "Good. Fear makes you careful. Just don't let it make you useless." He smiled, despite himself. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You were just too stubborn to notice." Spring gave way to summer, and baby Daniel grew strong and healthy. Kaya recovered quickly, back to running the household and the school within weeks. Nathan marveled at her strength. The way she could nurse a baby at dawn, teach 15 children by midday, and help him with ranch accounts by evening. Tomas, now 13, had taken to spending more time with the ranch hands, learning everything he could about the business. He could ride as well as any cowboy, rope better than most, and had a natural head for numbers that made him invaluable during roundup when they were counting and sorting cattle. One evening in July, Tomas came to Nathan with a proposal. "I want to try something with the fall calves." "What's that?" "Crossbreeding. We have Longhorns, which are hardy but lean. The Henderson Ranch has Herefords, which are meatier but less suited to the range. What if we bred them together? Get cattle that are both hardy and profitable." Nathan considered it. "That's not a new idea, but it's risky. Crossbreeding can go wrong. But it can also go right. The Hendersons are willing to let us try with their bull. One season, see what happens. If it works, we could revolutionize ranching in the territory." "You've been reading those agriculture journals again." "Knowledge is power. That's what Miss Blackwell says." Nathan looked at the boy, tall and confident, his eyes bright with ideas and ambition. This was what Daniel had wanted for his son. This was the future they'd all been building toward. "All right, we'll try it. But you're responsible for managing it. You track the breeding, the calving, the results. This is your project." Tomas's face lit up. "Thank you. You won't regret this." "I better not. If those crossbred calves turn out mean, you're the one riding out to rope them." The experiment became the talk of the territory. Other ranchers watched with skepticism and interest. If it worked, it could change everything. If it failed, it would be an expensive lesson. But Nathan had faith in Tomas. The boy had his father's courage and his mother's intelligence. He'd make it work. In September, Lily turned 10. She'd grown into a serious, thoughtful child who spent more time with books than with other children. Miss Blackwell said she'd never taught a student with such natural curiosity and retention. "She should go to university someday," the teacher told Nathan and Kaya. "She has the mind for it. Could be a teacher, maybe even a doctor if she wanted." "A woman doctor?" Nathan asked. "Why not? The world is changing. By the time Lily's grown, there will be more opportunities for educated women. She shouldn't be limited by what's traditional." Kaya smiled. "My daughter, the doctor. Daniel would have loved that." They started setting aside money for Lily's education, just as they were for Tomas. The ranch was profitable enough now that they could think beyond immediate survival. They could plan for futures they'd once thought impossible. That winter was milder, and the crossbred calves were born in spring without complications. They were stockier than pure Longhorns, hardier than pure Herefords, and they grew faster than either parent breed. "It worked," Tomas said, barely containing his excitement as they examined the new calves. "Look at them. They're perfect." "They're good," Nathan corrected. "Whether they're perfect, we won't know for another year when we see how they handle the range and the market. But yeah, son, this is good work." Word spread quickly. By summer, 3 other ranchers wanted to try Tomas's breeding program. The boy became a consultant of sorts, advising grown men on cattle management. At 14 years old, he was making decisions that affected the entire region's ranching economy. In August, on a day when the heat shimmered off the prairie like water, a rider came to the ranch. He was old, maybe 70, dressed in expensive but dusty clothes. He dismounted slowly, like his bones hurt, and asked to speak with Nathan. "My name is William Hayes," he said. Nathan's hand moved to his gun. Tom, standing nearby, did the same. "You're not welcome here." "I know. I know what I did, what I tried to do. I'm not here to make excuses or ask forgiveness. I just want to see them, my grandchildren, just once, before I die." "The court order says you can't come near them." "The court order says I can't claim custody. Doesn't say I can't ask. Please, I'm an old man. I have cancer. Doctor gives me 6 months, maybe less. I just want to see the children my son loved enough to die for." Nathan looked at Tom, who shrugged. This was Nathan's decision to make. "Wait here." He went inside and found Kaya in the kitchen, kneading bread with baby Daniel sleeping in a basket nearby. "William Hayes is outside. Says he's dying. Wants to see Tomas and Lily." Her hands stilled in the dough. "What do you think?" "I think he's a bastard who tried to steal our children, but I also think dying men deserve a chance to make peace." "It's not my decision alone. They're old enough to choose." They called Tomas and Lily into the kitchen and explained the situation. The children looked at each other, having a silent conversation, the way siblings do. Finally, Tomas spoke. "I'll see him, but only if Mama and Nathan are there." "Me too," Lily said. "I want to see the grandfather who thought we weren't good enough." They went outside together, a united front. Hayes stood in the yard, hat in his hands, looking smaller and frailer than Nathan remembered. "Grandfather," Tomas said. The word was formal, empty of warmth. Hayes's eyes filled with tears. "You look just like your father, both of you. He'd be so proud." "He is proud," Tomas said, "wherever he is." "I was wrong, about everything, about your mother, about the marriage, about thinking bloodlines mattered more than love. I lost my son because of my pride. I won't lose his memory by not admitting my mistakes." "Why should we believe you?" Lily asked. She was small for 10, but her voice was steady. "You tried to take us away. You sent men with guns." "Because I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking for truth. Your father was a better man than I ever was. He chose love over money, family over reputation. And he raised you, even in the short time he had, to be strong and brave. I see that now. I'm sorry it took me this long." They talked for an hour, sitting on the porch. Hayes told stories about Daniel as a boy, before the rift between them. Tomas and Lily listened, hungry for any pieces of their father they didn't have. When Hayes finally left, he shook Nathan's hand. "Thank you for protecting them, for giving them the life I couldn't. I didn't give them anything. They earned it themselves." Hayes nodded
and rode away. They never saw him again. 3 months later, Tom brought news that William Hayes had died in San Antonio. In his will, he'd left his entire fortune to Tomas and Lily, with a letter apologizing for his failures as a grandfather. The money came to over $200,000. "What do we do with it?" Kaya asked when the lawyers finalized everything. Tomas answered immediately. "We build more schools, maybe a hospital, something that helps people the way people helped us." "The Hayes Foundation," Lily suggested, "named after our father, not our grandfather, to remember what he stood for." And so it was done. Over the next 2 years, they built 3 more schools in surrounding counties, all following Kaya's model of educating every child regardless of background. They funded a small hospital in Socorro with a doctor who treated everyone, whether they could pay or not. The Cross Rivers Ranch became more than just a cattle operation. It became a symbol of what was possible when people chose community over isolation, cooperation over competition. In the spring of 1885, 7 years after Nathan had found Kaya in that burning clearing, they held a celebration. The ranch was hosting a territorial fair, with families coming from 100 miles in every direction. Nathan stood on a platform Tom had built, looking out at the crowd. Hundreds of people, ranchers and farmers, Apache and Mexican and white, all gathered together. Beside him stood Kaya, beautiful at 35, their 3-year-old son Daniel on her hip. Tomas, now 16, tall and confident, already being courted by ranchers who wanted him to manage their operations. Lily, 12, who'd announced she planned to attend medical school in Boston when she turned 18. Tom stood to his left, gray-haired now but still strong. Miss Blackwell was there with her new husband, a lawyer from Santa Fe, the Henderson family, Pastor Miller, Marshall Reed, who'd become a friend after testifying against Hayes. Dozens more, whose lives had intersected with theirs over the years. 7 years ago, Nathan began, his voice carrying across the crowd, I was alone, broken, convinced my life was over. Then a woman and 2 children appeared in my life and reminded me that endings can become beginnings, that the things we lose can make room for things we find. He looked at Kaya, who smiled at him. This ranch, this community, it's not built on land or cattle or money. It's built on something stronger, on the willingness to stand together when standing is hard, to fight for what matters, to protect each other, not because we have to, but because we choose to. He paused, gathering his thoughts. My first wife and daughter are buried on a hill behind our house. They'll always be part of this land, part of my story. But they're not the end of my story. They're the foundation it's built on. Every fence I mend, every calf born, every child taught in our schools, it honors their memory by proving that life goes on, that love doesn't end. It just changes shape. Kaya stepped forward, and Nathan took her hand. This ranch will outlive us, she said. Our children will run it, and their children after them. But more than that, what we've built here, this idea that people matter more than profit, that community matters more than competition, that will outlive us all. That's our real legacy. The crowd erupted in applause. As the sun set and the celebration continued with music and dancing, Nathan found himself standing by the north fence once more. The fence he'd built 8 years ago to keep the world out. Tomas joined him there, looking out across the land. This will all be mine someday, the boy said. Not a question, a statement of fact. Yours and Lily's, yeah. It's a lot of responsibility. It is. You ready for it? I think so. You've taught me well. Nathan put his arm around his stepson's shoulders. Your father taught you first. I just finished the job. I'm going to make him proud. Make you both proud. You already have, son. They stood there in silence as the stars emerged, as the sounds of celebration drifted across the prairie, as the land they'd fought for stretched away in every direction. The fence still stood, weathered and strong, and inside it, a family thrived. Not the family Nathan had started with, but the family he'd found in the ruins of loss. The family he'd fought for, bled for, and would protect with his last breath. This was legacy. This was home. This was everything worth living for. The years continued to pass, as they always do. Nathan taught Tomas everything about ranching, watched Lily grow into a brilliant young woman who left for medical school in Boston in 1893. He held more grandchildren, built more fences, and slowly, peacefully, grew old alongside Kaya. By 1918, sitting on that same porch with his grandson Samuel, Nathan had lived a life beyond anything he'd dared hope for 40 years earlier. And that's the story, old Nathan said, setting down his empty coffee cup. That's how a broken man learned to live again. Samuel sat quietly for a long moment, processing everything. The boy looked different now, less scared, more thoughtful. Grandpa, I understand now. You were terrified that night in the rain, but you fought anyway. Because I had something worth fighting for. Just like you will, son. War is hell. I won't lie to you about that. But if you remember why you're fighting, who you're fighting for, you'll come home. You'll find your way back. What if I don't know who I'm fighting for yet? Nathan smiled. Then fight for the person you'll become when it's over. Fight for the family you'll build. Fight for the fences you'll mend and the love you'll find. Fight for your future, Samuel. It's worth it. The boy nodded, standing straighter. Kaya came out then, carrying more coffee and that same knowing smile she'd worn for 40 years. Finished scaring him with your war stories? Finished giving him hope, Nathan corrected. She kissed the top of his head, her silver hair catching the morning light. Same thing, cowboy. 2 weeks later, Samuel Cross boarded the train east. Nathan and Kaya stood on the platform, watching him go. Nathan's hand shook slightly as he waved, but Kaya held it steady. He'll come back, she said. How do you know? Because he's a cross, and crosses always come home. She was right. Samuel survived the Great War, returned in 1919, and married in 1920. He ran the ranch with his uncle Tomas for 35 years, raised 3 children, and told his grandchildren the same story Nathan had told him. Nathan Cross died peacefully in 1925, age 79, in the bed he'd shared with Kaya for 47 years. His last words were to her, whispered so quietly no one else heard. But she smiled through her tears and whispered back, I know. I always knew. She lived another 60 years, stubborn and strong to the end, passing in 1985 at 95. The ranch stayed in the Cross family, generation after generation. The school Kaya built still stands, now a historic landmark. The fence Nathan built that summer of 1878 was replaced eventually, but its posts remain, weathered monuments to a love that refused to break. And on the hill behind the main house, 4 graves rest under cottonwood trees. Sarah and Emma Cross, Nathan Cross, and Kaya rivers cross. Together at last, in the land they built with hope, defended with courage, and filled with love. The last fence still stands, not because it's strong, because they chose to protect what was inside.